How's it going, gang? It's the final render here, and just 2 days ago, The Outer Worlds was released. This very highly anticipated RPG game by the original creators of Fallout and some of the team who worked on New Vegas has finally been released after much anticipation for us all to play. And I've been playing it for a while, and I'm going to be giving you guys my first impressions of The Outer Worlds. I've played it for about 2.5 hours now, and I've completed the first section of the game. So I'm going to talk about what I think about it and let you guys know whether if I think it is worth picking up. So to start off with, a lot of people have been saying, is The Outer Worlds a New Vegas 2? The highly anticipated New Vegas 2 that we were never able to get. And in short, from what I have seen, I am going to say no. But it is something you should definitely be very excited about. So what is The Outer Worlds? The Outer Worlds is a game set in the far future where privatized corporations have started to settle on the far regions of the universe, and humans are starting to go over to settle other far planets. However, it is very troublesome doing this sort of thing, which leads to lots of trouble where corporations run all the towns and are responsible for people's lives. And we have to make sure that our little ecopod full of humans and smart scientists who will help fix the scenario will get to these corporations safely. However, the ship has broken down, so we as an individual have to save everybody aboard our ship in order to help save the universe. And that's the general premise of the story. So let's talk about the overall look of the game and overall the gameplay of it, because the style and the story is really what makes it. So overall, the style of The Outer Worlds is stuff that we have definitely seen before. It is definitely very reminiscent of games like BioShock and even the indie classic We Happy Few. It's kind of that smiley corporate face, but actually the corporate face is actually quite nasty behind the scenes, that kind of look. And it's also got kind of a No Man's Sky vibe to it, where space is colourful and bright and interesting to look at, as opposed to, in reality, where space is probably quite dark and boring. So it is very nice, and we've got some nice eye candy and lots of pretty plants and pretty wildlife for us to see when we are out exploring. It also has an awful lot of the kind of older 1950s sci-fi parody style of advertisement that we're used to seeing in games like Fallout, and the UI itself and just the general way the menus look is very nice. It definitely has a lot of inspiration from games like BioShock with the way the UI is presented to the player, and overall it functions very, very well. It may look a little bit intimidating to some people who are not used to RPGs, but actually it's very, very simple. There may be a lot of text in places, but it's actually a very simple UI to work and is very easy to manage as a whole. So overall, the kind of style of the game is something which is definitely something it needs praise for. However, something which is definitely worth mentioning about the UI, and that leads us into our next topic, is that the text can be very small and hard to read sometimes. And the next topic I'm going to talk about is to do with the tech behind it, primarily being that there is a huge lack of customization options for how the game runs and looks. You just have very basic sliders for ultra, high and medium settings, and also some ability to change for subtitles. In a game like this, where it's going to have a very, very big PC audience, and when we're on consoles which are definitely capable of ultra high definition 4K graphics, we should get a little bit more customization with our graphics. And not only that, but the actual graphics themselves aren't really special in any way. The art style makes up for it quite a bit, but there is one thing which kept annoying me about the graphics of this game, and that is that it has got a very short depth of field, or it's got some very aggressive mip-mapping, to where when I would try to look at something in the distance, it would always be blurry. However, sometimes even things that are very close appear to be very blurry, presumably to save on performance. Could we please get a little patch in here to make it so we can adjust the graphics a bit more in depth, and also make it so the mip mapping or the depth of field is far less aggressive? I have to admit, after reading lots of small text and trying to look at things that are out of focus which should be in focus, my eyes started to hurt after a while, because my eyes were straining quite a lot to read the small text and try to focus on items that should be in focus but weren't. But that's the only thing I can really say about it bad graphically, and from an engine perspective, it did drop frames a couple of times, but honestly, it's nothing really that's going to spoil the game in any meaningful way whatsoever, and all those things can be patched. So please, I beg you, Private Division and Obsidian, please patch that in. That is something we can do nowadays, and it is something that people will definitely be happy with. You've got a great game on your hands, don't let something so minor like that get in the way of people's scores, etc. And then after that, if we can talk about the world itself, so to speak. A lot of people were hoping that this would be a Fallout New Vegas 2 with an open world or even an open universe in this case. And that is definitely not the case. What we have is various small hub worlds or hub planets. This is actually something very similar to the recent game Deus Ex Human Revolution, rather than go with the open world approach, to where you have several small little areas and you can traverse those small areas at whatever pace you want, and you can go back and forth between them. One thing which is very common for RPGs nowadays is to always have an open world. And in my honest opinion, a really good open world will always be better than lots of small little hub worlds. However, hub worlds have a huge advantage. They can help performance because they're not loaded as much, and also it means that even if you have to travel to various locations, you never feel like you're actually traveling so much, because since the area is smaller, you can make a lot more ground within a smaller amount of time, meaning the game keeps snappy and you're not having huge amounts of time where you're walking to a new location. However, there are also some other things to speed this up as well, such as fast travel is in the game, so you can get to several areas of the map fairly quickly. But there is one thing which is a bit of a nuisance I've noticed, and that is that there are quite a few instances where an objective for a mission will actually be quite near the quest giver, and the quest giver will tell you to go and find an object, but in reality it's actually not very far away, so it kind of breaks your immersion a little bit by thinking, how did you not know where it was? It's only over there. I can point to the person you're telling me to go find, etc. But overall, it didn't really break up the gameplay, and it is nice to have smaller, very uniquely defined hub worlds than maybe a giant open world which has an awful lot of traversing in it. And when you are in this world, you are going to be constantly progressing your character and making your character exactly what you want them to be. And this leads us on to the section where we talk about the character creation. The character creation is very, very competent. It is actually very similar to character creators that we have seen in games like Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, to where you can pick your core skills, your kind of core tenets. However, those core skills will actually improve multiple types of abilities for your characters. So improving strength, for example, will give you improvements in several areas, not just being able to carry more stuff or hit harder. It will actually give you different points in very specific things that are tailored to do with strength. So whilst it may look like you have an awful lot of options to choose to put points into, in reality, putting 1 point into something actually will upgrade maybe 3 types of abilities. So it's actually simplified in that sense, but still in depth enough to where you can put lots of points into different things and make whatever character you want. And you are going to be doing this a lot, because when you are going ahead and completing all of your objectives, you will need to have various skill checks in order to complete the objectives you want. Primarily, there will be things like hacking terminals, there'll be things like lock-picking safes, or even trying to convince someone in a dialogue option to do something for you. And you are able to upgrade those skills as you go along in order to tailor your character the way you want to play. However, when it comes to actually persuading people in dialogue, it is not just simply about having one simple dialogue stat. You will sometimes use, say, your tech skill in order to persuade someone about something techie, or you will use your strength in order to increase your intimidation chance inside a conversation. So even if you don't put that many points into, say, just straight dialogue like charisma, it does mean that you will still be able to pass various speech checks when you are in dialogue. And also, when you progress through the game, you will get the ability to get new perks, which will give you new abilities, such as being able to run faster, being able to slow down time more, being able to fast travel when you're over encumbered, etc. And all of this is stuff that you can use to make your character exactly what you want them to be. I'm pretty certain eventually people are going to find the perfect characters and min-max the build, so to speak. However, when I've been playing the game with a gun and speech check build, I haven't failed a single check, whether it's a speech check or hacking a terminal or trying to lockpick something. If I've been able to do it, then I have always succeeded. So I imagine it's probably pretty lenient, at least in the early game. However, it may get more in depth in the future. I'm not certain. But if it does go that way and you end up having a little bit of trouble with your character, you can respec your character at any time using a respec machine inside your spaceship. Respecing, however, is not free. After a while, it will cost a lot of in-game currency known as bits, which normally you would use for buying new upgrades, buying new ammo, buying new armor, etc. So you've really got to make sure that you are certain you want to go ahead and do it. However, the option is still open to you at any time. And moving on after the character creation, let's talk about the combat. The combat in the game is something which isn't necessarily something a lot of players will experience, because in most cases it is possible to sneak around or out-talk your way out of combat. However, in all seriousness, it is very likely you will experience combat of some kind. However, the combat itself is very competent. The guns feel good and punchy, but at the same time don't feel too slow and realistic, if that makes sense. You do get some nice ability to upgrade your weapons with stat buffs, sometimes using money, sometimes using objects you find inside the world, in order to tailor the guns to your own specific needs. And there is a very large variety of weapons, including regular old guns, long guns, small guns, big guns, guns with certain type of effects, like burning, for example. And melee is actually very interesting because you are able to use different types of melee effects on melee weapons, such as electricity and fire, etc. And one thing which is very cool about the combat that not many people have mentioned, really, from what I have seen, is the ability to heal yourself using your inhaler. However, your inhaler is not just a way to give yourself some hit points back. You can also add other consumables you can find in the world in order to make your inhaler give you some different effects. For example, I can go and put some extra ingredients inside my inhaler, which means I will get a little bit more toughness, or I will get a little bit more regeneration on my tactical time dilation, which is the ability to slow down time. And you can go and change these on the fly before you go into combat. So before you go into a big combat, you can tailor your inhaler to have exactly the abilities you will need when you heal yourself up in this battle. And every time you go and hit F, you will get a little bit of a buff from all of those consumables. It gives consumables something other than just eating them or selling them, and it gives you a little bit of customization inside the combat. And also something which is very important in the combat, which definitely needs to be mentioned, is of course the squad system. And the squad system is lifted directly from Mass Effect, and it works very, very well here. You'll be able to take some companions with you on your adventures, and you can give them various commands such as go here, stop there, and you can also set some very interesting abilities that they have and trigger them at any point in order to deal massive damage to your opponents. And also outside of the combat, you can go ahead and tailor their AI behavior, and you can also tailor what weapons and equipment they have. So it means if you wanted to, you could perfectly min-max your characters by getting your character who is good with guns to tell them to only use sniper rifles and only stay away at a long distance, and then you can properly make sure your companions stay alive, and you can properly tailor their equipment loadout to match their skill set, and you can actually progress your companions as well with an affinity system, and also rank them up and give them their own perks that will be useful for not just yourself, but your entire squad in combat. So ultimately, the kind of squad system in the combat works really, really well indeed. But let's talk about the real nitty-gritty part of this game, or what makes it such a big selling point, and that is the dialogue. The original creators of this game, who made the original Fallout games, are very well known for their dialogue and how their dialogue can progress the actual character and how the dialogue will actually affect the story and the world around them. And in this game, it is also no exception. What you say in a dialogue option can often make a very different gameplay experience from someone who said something different. Not only does it give you the ability to learn more about the world and maybe get some different quests that you could accidentally skip over, but it also means that you are able to change the way that you have your companions think about other characters, or the way that your companions will react to you if you say something that your companion actually doesn't like. But the main thing about the dialogue is the fact that it opens up a various branching narrative of every single quest line. Every single quest will have some form of narrative split to where you can join one person with one side of the argument, or you can join another NPC with their side of the argument. And you ultimately are the ones who always make the decisions. There aren't very many occasions where the NPC will give you an option, but then they will make a decision for you. What you say goes, and it really, really works with this. And not only that, but actually listening to the dialogue is very enjoyable. This is the sort of game where you kind of lean back in your chair, have one hand on the number keypad on your keyboard so you can choose what kind of dialogue you want to say, and just listen to what people say. It pauses time in the background so you can take as much time as you want to listen to them, find out as much information as you want, and properly enjoy the writing itself. And whilst I would say the writing itself is very good, there are some things which I don't think necessarily appeal to everyone. For example, a lot of people say that the game and the dialogue is actually very funny. In the 2.5 hours I played, I actually didn't laugh at all or even smirk. I know humour is a very subjective thing. However, the dialogue also has plenty of room for other things, such as just very thoughtful sci-fi concepts or very interesting concepts to do with corporate greed. However, in my honest opinion, the dialogue never really made me laugh, and I never really found it quirky, if that makes sense. And when there was something that was meant to be a laugh, I found it to be a very kind of cliche joke. So, humour not for me. However, the in-depth sci-fi themes and the overall idea of corporate entities ruling the universe is something that is very much present, and I do really enjoy finding out all of the different aspects of this world just by dialogue, rather than, say, exploring. Even though exploring is still something you can definitely do as well. And you will want to do as much talking as possible so you can find all the different options on how you can complete a quest. And then once you've got all the options open to you, you can make your own decision, which is fantastic. And outside of the actual controllable dialogue, your companions actually do give you a lot of interesting dialogue that will help you out. For example, if in combat you are fighting someone who has very high armor and your weapon is not penetrating their armor, your character will actually tell you your weapon isn't good enough to break through that armor, in a way to just kind of help you out without really paying too much attention to your weapon stats, which is a really nice thing. It kind of proves that the companions are not only looking out for you, but it's a way to kind of re-emphasize the fact that customizing your weapons and your loadout is important, and your companions will help you to do that just with little dialogue options like that. Okay, but now we've talked about that, we kind of discussed the kind of main core tenets of the game. What are some of the quirks that I really like about it overall? One thing which I found really interesting that many games have claimed to be able to do, but honestly haven't never really pulled off, that this one kind of does come close to, is the fact that pretty much every single NPC is killable. I believe I read in an interview somewhere there is only one NPC in the game which you can't kill. And going ahead and just killing NPCs just to see what happens is something you can totally do.
All Spacer's Choice weapons are now 30% less likely to malfunction. You've tried the best, now try the rest. Spacer's Choice. Yes, nailed it that time.
If you want to go and kill a crucial quest giver, you can do that. Probably means you won't get to do the quest, but ultimately that is something you can do if you want to. And many RPGs have promised that kind of ability. However, often there is some kind of catch to it, to where there are certain story-based characters which can't be killed. But I believe in this, there is only one. So that is something very, very cool. Whilst I am definitely a fan of open worlds, I do think the smaller open world definitely does work. I like the fact that it is very fast to go from one area to another. But I would say, however, that after about 2.5 hours of playing, I completed the first planet, so to speak, as far as I'm aware, which contained 3 side quests and then 1 main quest. Now, there may be other side quests in there that I completely missed. However, I believe I was pretty thorough, so I think overall, the actual size of the game isn't as big as maybe some other more open world RPGs would be. However, there is still lots of replayability, especially with the main quest. The side quests themselves didn't really have too many branching dialogue options. However, the main quest in that area definitely does, and that is something that is very cool about this game as a whole. So in conclusion, for my first impressions of the Outer Worlds, this may sound like a review, but I've only really played it for about 2.5 hours. A lot of people have been saying, is this New Vegas 2? As I mentioned earlier, no, it is not. In fact, I'm willing to say it's actually not got that much familiar with Fallout at all. If anything, it is far closer to games like Mass Effect, Deus Ex, or Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. It's actually got more in common with those systems than it does with, say, a Fallout game. Like the combat and the squadding and the affinity system with your squad is very reminiscent to Mass Effect. The kind of hub world and the smaller quest design is very, very similar to Deus Ex, and also the kind of perk system is very similar to that as well. And the branching dialogue options definitely reminds me a lot of the Masquerade Bloodlines. And that is something I loved about the Masquerade Bloodlines, that I could just lean back in my chair and just go through every single dialogue option before I actually make a decision. But one thing it does have very familiar with Fallout is the amount of picking up scrap and being able to scavenge everything, being able to read every terminal, being able to get as much information as possible before you make a decision, and then often using dialogue to get your way around a scenario. And also something very cool is that the stealth mechanics do work quite well, so if you don't want to go with dialogue or combat, stealth is also a very viable option. So overall, I would say the best strength about the Outer Worlds, it's also probably its biggest weakness. There aren't that many weaknesses to this game. It is extremely good and I really like it, and I'm definitely going to play some more in a moment. But I would say its biggest weakness is that it doesn't attempt to do anything groundbreaking or revolutionary in any way whatsoever. However, that's also the best thing about it. It is veterans of the games industry who have got many years of experience doing what they know works, and doing it to the best of their abilities. So whilst it isn't groundbreaking or revolutionary in any way, it is extremely good at what it does do, and is an absolute blessing to play, and it definitely brings me back to games even older than New Vegas, and that is something I really adore about it. So thank you very much for watching my first impressions. I know I've probably rambled on a lot about this. I hope you can really enjoy this. Obviously, this channel is primarily focused on Fallout, so it is very nice to have a new RPG game that the community, for the most part, seems to really enjoy, that we can bring future contents on. So if you guys want to see more Outer Worlds content and even some Fallout content, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and I can't wait to see you guys in space. Bye bye for now.